Hello class, you are once again welcome to my YouTube channel where we discuss English as second language users. We are continuing in our episode of how to resolve pronunciation problem with words that end in letter CT. In this series, we started by examining when the word ends in letter CT and we have morpheme S added to it, how difficult it is to be pronounced. And we found that you can easily pronounce a word by removing the sound that is represented by letter T in that final position. So we have several examples. You yourself can go ahead. I believe you must have learned a lot of things in that class. You should go ahead and try constructing words with letter CT at the final position and then add letter S to it and to find how we can pronounce English in such environment without problem. In the second series, we also looked at how letter LY can be added to words ending in letter CT and removing of sound that is represented by letter T in order to have a pronunciation done without any struggle. Today, we are finalizing our discussion of words whose spellings end in letter CT with additional morpheme added to it. We are going to look at how the morpheme nest can also be added to words ending in letter CT and get pronounced with similar process. Let's take the word straight. For example, straight is one of the words that end in letter CT. If we have nest added to the word straight, the pronunciation will prove difficult if you do not apply the principle we used in our previous classes. So straight can be pronounced in isolation without any problem if there is no addition of nest to it. But with the addition of this nest to it, you will have a little difficulty at pronouncing it. The situation demands that you take the sound represented by this letter T away and go ahead to pronounce straightness. 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 Let's look at another word, correct. Correct. If you have to add ness to it, you don't need to struggle at all. Just simply take the sound represented by the letter T, take it away, and go ahead and pronounce correctness. 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 The same thing applies to every word that has letter CT in the word final position. If you have to add this morpheme next to it, all you need to do is to apply the principle which we have been discussing since the first series in this episode. You apply that principle and then have your word pronounced without any struggle. This is exactness, and pronouncing it is very simple. If you know how to take the sound represented by the final T, take that sound away, you have your pronunciation done without any struggle. So, we have seen three instances where morphological process in any word that ends in letter CT usually requires removal of the sound represented by letter T when we have certain morphemes added to it. In our first series, we looked at morpheme S. When you add it to any word ending in CT, how you need to take the final T out of the environment. We also saw how morpheme LY, when you add it to the word ending in final CT, how you have to take the final T away and go ahead and pronounce your English without any struggle. And today, we have considered ness as another morpheme that also constrain the removal of the final T for the purpose of having the smooth pronunciation of our English. So note all this, that when you find a word anywhere that ends in CT, which requires additional morpheme, especially any of these three morphemes, you need to take the final T out of that environment and go ahead and pronounce the word without struggling for realization of the sound represented by that letter T. Thank you for being with us in this three series of cluster reduction. We shall continue to examine ideas of how we can pronounce English without struggle, as it is expected of us as users of English, especially in second language environment. We should have good mastery of English than those who don't have English as their second language. And you should know that these things we have discussed are the things, the way these native speakers of English pronounce their thing. You may not find it so in the dictionary, but when you listen to a native speaker of English, you find that that is how it is done to resolve the articulatory difficulty that occurs as a result of the new word formation. So you need to note it that when a word ends in letter city, you need to take this away when you have the morphemes discussed in this series added to them. Thank you. We shall meet in the next video.